Hello and welcome back to Slow Damage. We are in the aftermath of certain things. I've been called out so specifically that it's going to be mind-blowing to me from now until the end of time. This session may not be quite as long as the others, but I'm playing it as much as I possibly can in this one session. So cigarette between my lips, I walked to the bathroom and stepped into the shower stall. After one last long drag, I dropped the cigarette into the drain, then turned the shower on over my head. I quickly rinsed off all the bodily fluids, then stopped the water and walked out. Then I threw on some random clothes and headed for the sofa without drying my hair. Because of Tuno's drug, my body still ached at its core, but it was now at a level that I could ignore. I had no interest in finding a one-night stand tonight. More importantly, it seemed like Tuno drugged me as a threat to Taku. I lit another cigarette and took a deep drag, then lay back against the sofa. Something that blatant was bound to find its way back to Sakaki. In fact, I got the sense Tuno went after me knowing Sakaki would find out about it. Was it a declaration of war against Sakaki, or was his business with Taku just that urgent? Or was it both? I put my cig between my lips and grabbed my phone off the coffee table. But before I could call Sakaki, it started to buzz. Believe it or not, Sakaki had chosen to call me at that exact moment. I put out my cigarette in the ashtray on the table, then answered the phone.
Hi.
That makes sense, actually, yeah.
まあ、いろいろと。なんとか。詳しいことは聞き出せなかった。けど、タクが遠野と関わってるのは間違いない。
I told Sakaki everything I'd overheard between Taku and Tuno. The one thing I left out was the secret basement at the clinic. I didn't blindly trust Sakaki, so I wasn't willing to give him more information than strictly necessary. When I finished, there was a several-second pause. I feel like we got a sense of that in a little detail that was glazed over a while ago. That we knew that Taku had some kind of connection to, at the very least, something Yakuza, something Takasato.
昔から?
That goes back to like college or something?
今回の件も突然脅されたってわけじゃねえ。もともと組が先生にいろいろと助けてもらってて、どうなその窓口やってたんだ。身元を隠したい人間の治療や診断書の偽造。あとはわざと重症者に仕立て上げたり、高里組に借金がある連中の体に管理用のウェブタグを埋め込んだりな。負債者の体内にウェブタグを埋めて町から逃げ出さねえように監視塔で追跡や管理をしてるってな知ってんだろう。
ああ。
ウェブタグを埋めるのは高里組が信頼してる一部の医者しかやってねえんだ。そういう意味でも先生は組の中で重要な位置にいるんだよ。お前そのことは知ってたのか？
No, but I feel like I should have guessed that by now.
いや。
知ってる人間はほんの一部だ。で、遠野の野郎だが、あいつはおそらく個人的なヤバい仕事も頼んでやがったんだろう。今先生に手伝わせてる仕事もそうだ。薬なんだよ。
薬。
Oh.
新しい薬物の開発だ。 昔から伝統や古いしきたりを嫌ってたからな。あいつからしてみれば親父が死んでそういうもんを気にする必要もなくなった。むしろ俺が跡目を継ぐってことでとっとと新しいビジネスを始めてこっちを蹴落とそうと躍起になってんだ。
Yeah, like any good power vacuum.
だからまあ村瀬先生がどういうつもりで遠野に協力してるのかは分からねえが、あの二人は昔から関係があるってことだ。
遠野はタクに例の件まで時間がないって言ってた。何のことかわかるか？
例の件？いや、やろう。何か企んでやがるのか。こっちでも調べてみよう。
ああ、
万が一って時のために手も打ってあるからな。遠野の好きなようにはさせねえよ。
何か仕込んでるのか？
お前に先生を登頂させたのだって仕込みのうちだ。こういうのはな、何重にも策を講じる必要があるんだ。とにかく先生と今後も一緒にいるべきか真面目に考えた方がいいぞ。人間どんな裏があるかなんて見た目だけじゃわからねえからな。
Sakaki let out a sigh.
もし先生から離れるってんなら俺のところに来い。その方が安全だ。と、エイジに変わるぞ。お前に話があるんだとよ。
もしもし、どうさん？
After a rustling sound, I heard Aiji's cheerful voice on the other end of the line.
盗聴器の調子はどうですか？
Ha, yeah, presuming it's bugs.
問題ない。
Bugs are fine.
それならよかった。村瀬先生のこと僕は知ってたんで今更って感じなんですけど、トワさんとしてはやっぱりショックですか？
意外ではあったな。
そりゃそうですよね。長いこと一緒にいるんですし。本当は安全性を考えるならトワさんは榊さんのところにいた方がいいと思うんですけど、トワさんよりも村瀬先生が納得しませんよね、きっと。先生も先生なりにトワさんに対する責任感みたいなものもあるでしょうし、だからこの件に関してはトワさん次第ってことになると思います。
Right as I paused, I heard a knock at the door.
とは具合はどうだ？
切るぞ。
I hung up the phone, and the next moment, Taku came into the room.
薬の効果は？
Though he was still a little bashful, he was clearly making an effort to act normal. I looked up at him from the sofa.
もう切れた。
そうか。だが念のために安静にしていた方がいい。副作用があるかもわからんからな。
As he spoke, he produced a little white paper bag and a bottle of water.
体外へ毒の排出を促す薬だ。飲んでくれ。
ああ。
After I took the pills from him, he continued to stare at me.
お前、渡しただけじゃそのまま飲まないことがあるだろ。だから今飲んでほしいんだが、1回2錠だ。
Apparently, he was going to stand there until he saw me take the pills. He had never done this before. A tiny yellow flag rose up in my mind. I pulled the silver blister pack out of the paper bag and popped both pills into my mouth. Or more accurately, I pretended to. As I discreetly discarded the pills on the floor, I twisted the cap off the water bottle and took a sip. Once I finished, Taku let out a sigh of relief. He seemed convinced that I had taken the pills.
よし、それじゃあ寝ろ。
And yet he still didn't budge. I furrowed my brow at him.
もしかして寝るまでそこにいるつもりか？
おう、
冗談だろ。ガキじゃあるまいし。
昔はよくこうやって寝かしつけてたんだぞ。
いつの話だよ。
With a sigh, I lay down on the sofa and closed my eye. Instead of bickering with him, it'd be easier to just pretend to sleep. After I closed my eye, Taku continued to stand there, unmoving. At first it irritated me and I wished he would get out, but over time it started to feel strangely familiar. A long time ago, someone used to watch over me like this while I slept. Was it Taku? I couldn't recall. It felt oddly reassuring to have someone there. Why did I feel that way? It puzzled me. As I lay there like a possum, I sensed Taku's movements. Then, once I heard the door shut, I opened my eye. He was gone. Did he need to have him, like, particularly out of it in order to go do shit in the basement? I sat up, grabbed my phone off the coffee table, and opened the tracker app. I figured I'd double-check Taku's location, just to be sure. The icon marking him was flashing over the clinic building. Phone in hand, I rose to my feet and headed for the door. Instead of the elevator, I took the stairs down to the first floor. I walked down the hall to the storage room and grabbed the handle. It opened. Quietly, I slipped into the dark room and walked to the far door. Last time it had been left ajar, but today it was closed. Experimentally, I reached out and twisted the knob. Locked. So I squatted down, pulled my lockpick wire from my pants pocket, and inserted it into the keyhole. Working from feel alone, I jiggled the pins until I felt the tension diminish, then pulled my tools back out. Then I tried the handle again, and sure enough, it opened. What the fuck is down here? Carefully, I opened the door and headed down the stairs. At the bottom was another door, but this one wasn't locked at all. Beyond it was what looked like an operating room. A figure stood at the operating table in the center of the room. He sensed me and turned. Taku's eyes widened at the unexpected visitor. I stood in the doorway, staring blankly back at him.
この部屋は
Flustered, he averted his gaze.
答えろよ。遠野と何かやってるんだろ。
As I spoke, I swiftly glanced around the area. On the operating table was a clear plastic bag full of pills. Is it just testing and developing new drugs? So, like, drugging people to see effect, reaction time, all that?
公にできない治療や診察を頼まれた時にだけこの地下室を使ってる。
Defeated, he looked at me with anguish in his eyes.
それよりどうしてここが分かったんだ。
どうしてだと思う？
あ、
盗聴器を仕掛けた。
なんだって。
He furrowed his brow at me in horror.
遠野との会話も聞かせてもらった。
榊さんか。
He muttered to himself in understanding.
昨日地下室に誰かが入った形跡があった。それもお前か？
違う。中には入ってない。
He squinted at me suspiciously.
本当か？
ああ。
そうか。
He didn't look convinced, but he dropped the accusation with a sigh.
そこまで知ってるなら自分がどれだけ危険な状況に置かれてるかもよく分かっただろ。
ああ。お前から離れた方がいいって言われたよ。
どこにいたってお前の身が危ないことには変わりがない。だから外に出るなと言ってる。
The emotion faded from his face. That's a lot of red in his orange. For a moment, Taku's smoke shifted Taku's smoke shifted tinged red, and thrashed, but it quickly went back to normal. It was the first time I'd ever seen him like this. Normally, he was warm and cordial to everyone around him. But the man who stood before me now was cold and emotionless. His icy gaze pierced me.
公にできない治療や診察をしてるって話も聞いた。それから、遠野に頼まれた新しい薬の開発のことも。
His eyes hardened further.
口では散々きれい事を並べておきながら、裏で随分なことをやってるんだろう。俺が遠野に薬を盛られたのも、そのとばっちりだ。榊が言ってた通りかもな。お前のそばにいた方が危ないって。
確かに。
He averted his eyes as he muttered.
そう取られても仕方がないとは思う。だが、俺はずっとお前を見てきた。お前が子供だった頃からずっと、病気や怪我の治療も、健康管理もしてきたんだ。だから、お前を危険な目に遭わせたくないという気持ちは本当だ。それは、榊さんも同じ気持ちのはずなんだ。あの人は、お前を自分の息子のように気にかけてるだろう。つまり、遠野からしてみれば、お前は格好の標的ってことだ。最悪、脅しの手段としてお前を殺そうとする可能性も十分に考えられる。それだけは、絶対に許さない。
His voice was quiet, but the more he spoke, the more feverish his gaze became. His smoke turned bright scarlet, almost like it had been painted over.
お前が誰かに殺されるなんて、いなくなるなんて、
It felt like he was talking more to himself than me. Taku walked up to me, his expression perfectly blank, and grabbed me by the shoulders. His fingers dug into my arms.
許さない。お前が俺の元からいなくなるなんて、絶対に。
His eyes were unfocused. He wasn't really looking at me. His empty gaze sent a chill down my spine. Has he fixated on Toa because of something else? Like someone else was taken away from him?
Taku.
When I called his name, his eyes widened like he had woken from a dream. He backed away from me, one hand pressed to his mouth. Stammering, Taku looked at me hesitantly. No trace of that empty gaze remained. Did he lose a little brother or a son or something?
襲おうとでも思ったか。
Instantly, his brow furrowed in anguish.
襲う？そんなバカな。違う、俺は。違う、すまなかった。本当に、そんなつもりじゃなかったんだ。ただ、お前が心配だということをどうしても伝えたくて。
Wordlessly, I turned on my heel and hurried to the door.
おい、トア！
I ran out of the basement and up the stairs. Meanwhile, my mind replayed everything that had just happened. Taku was like a completely different person back there. Yeah! His dead-eyed stare gave me goosebumps. What was he planning to do to me if I hadn't spoken up? Never before had I seen him look like that. I left the clinic and ran down the dark street. But my mind was composed and rational. I had run out of the building on purpose to fluster him. My intention, to see if I could draw out that other side of him again. Yeah, this is where all of Toa's capabilities of drawing things out of people and that kind of, I just smacked the mic, that manipulation in head games, this is where it all comes into play in a much more real way. To tell the truth, I was curious about this other side of him. I'm stunned, Toa. I ran for a while, then ducked into a random alley and came to a stop. Listening intently, I scanned the sounds of my surroundings. No sign of anyone chasing me. Once I caught my breath, I leaned against the alley wall. I wasn't wearing my coat, so the chill quickly permeated the fabric of my shirt. It felt nice against my flushed skin. I leaned my head back and looked up at the sky. Then I remembered Taku's empty gaze, and the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I found myself craving nicotine. All this time. Ah! A short while later, I heard the sound of speedy footsteps approaching. They were coming from the other end of the alley. I straightened up and looked in the direction of the sound. I thought maybe Taku had come after me, but it didn't sound like him. By his footsteps? Eventually, a lone figure appeared at the other end of the alley, his labored breaths echoing off the narrow walls. When he spotted me, he froze. Ray? It was too dark to make out any identifying figures.
Toa-san.
I heard a familiar voice and squinted at him.
Igarashi.
Igarashi!
Sose!
Oh, has he been the one keeping an eye on Toa? He's our handler, so to speak.
Toa-san, 会えてよかった。
Igarashi beamed brightly, though his countenance was looking haggard.
俺相談したいことがあって。それで父さんに直接会おうと思ってたんです。
Is he not supposed to reveal that he's the one tailing Toa? He pulled the plastic bag from his coat pocket. Inside, I could see a ton of pills. Probably about 100, maybe more. Oh, my bad.
これ。
It's about these. He paused and stared at the ground.
村瀬先生のところから持ってきたんです。クリニックからか。はい。この薬、遠野さんが先生に作らせてるやつです。
Yeah. No, that makes sense. If he's testing them on subjects, then making them himself tracks. I shifted my gaze from the pills to Igarashi.
遠野がタクに薬を作らせてること知ってるのか？
Nodding, he stowed the bag back in his pocket.
榊さんから聞いてます。っていうか、榊さんの隠れ家が遠野さんにバレたみたいで、いよいよやばくて。持ってきたってどういうことだ？
I cut in, bringing him back on topic. His face crumpled like he was about to cry.
実は俺1週間くらい前なんですけど。
Oh, it was Igarashi.
忍び込む？はい。もし薬があったら取ってこいってそう言われてたんす。
I'm suddenly terrified that I'm not recording. One moment. No, we're fine.
だから俺ずっと先生のことを張ってて、外出した時を狙って忍び込めないか様子を伺ってたんす。それで昨日とうとう。
He squeezed his eyes shut. He must have picked the locks to get in, same as me. Any Takasato grunt would know how. That aside, the timing lined up with when I planted bugs on Taku and discovered the basement for myself. Furthermore, Taku reported to Tuno that there were signs of a break-in. At the time, he said nothing had been taken, but apparently that was a lie. Good thing, too, since if he admitted someone had stolen the drugs, there was no telling what Tuno would do.
榊さんが言ってたんすけど、
近々遠野さんが何か企んでるみたいなんす。内容はわからないけどやばいって。父さん、俺怖いんす。
He bit his lip in anguish.
榊さんに言われたから仕方なくやりましたけど、俺のせいでもし先生に何かあったらって、そう思ったら怖くて。誰かに話したからって許されるわけじゃないんすけど、父さんに話したいってそう思って。
Just then, I sensed someone's presence. I raised a hand to stop him from saying another word. Right now, I was being surveyed by Tuno's men. It wasn't safe for me to remain in one location for too long.
移動するぞ。
どこへ行くんすか？
俺も遠野に監視されてる。デスマッチエリアの方が見つかりにくい。
We are going to the deathmatch area! We are going back there! I mean, it was one of the first things we were introduced to in this entire story, so...
なるほど。確かにそうっすね。行きましょう。
I glanced around, then headed deeper into the alley. With Igarashi in tow, I approached the deathmatch area. On our way, we noticed black Yakuza cars and groups of men clearly searching for someone. We gave them a wide berth until we finally made it inside the deathmatch area.
なんとかなりましたね。
Igarashi was out of breath from speed walking to match my pace. I was still on guard, however.
いたぞ。
A group of men all dashed at us out of nowhere. Then a familiar black car pulled up, brakes screeching right next to us.
まったく懲りないな、お前も。
Tuno hopped out from the front passenger seat and looked at me in contempt. Then his gaze shifted to Igarashi.
お前も一緒か、五十嵐。
Igarashi flinched, eyes as wide as saucers. I scrutinized Tuno's expression. He seemed surprised to see me and Igarashi together, but I didn't detect any panic. Maybe he wasn't aware that the pills had been stolen. I didn't notice any dramatic changes in his smoke either.
二人ともこっちへ。
Just then, another car came speeding down the street and braked hard right next to us. The driver door opened and Sakaki stepped out. Oh shit.
榊さん。
Igarashi murmured, terrified. Sakaki faced off with Tuno, a hard look on his face. Then a white van pulled up and a bunch of goons, probably Sakaki's men, filed out. Tuno watched all this unfold with eyebrows raised in amusement.
おいおい、まさか次期組長さんまで乗り込んでくるとはな。
Sakaki laughed, and a provocative sneer rose up on his face.
そっちこそ相当とわに入れ上げてるようだな。一日でわざわざ2回も会いに来るなんてな。
They glared at each other in silence for a moment.
やれやれ、穏やかじゃないな。落ち着けよ。さっきだってるバカたちにもそう言ってくれないか。
No, I don't think I will.
問題は早期解決が第一だ。だろ？裏切り者が出るならなおさらな。
はあ、それは初耳だ。大いに問題だな。だがどうやら俺たちが疑われているようじゃないか。なあ。あ
あ、俺も残念だよ。共に高里組を支えていく仲間だと思ってたんだがな。欲深い野郎がいたようだ。
そんなことも見抜けない組長じゃ誰もついていかないんじゃないか。新小海はお前には支えられない。また戦争でも追っ始めよってのか。それも楽しそうだな。
Tuna reached into his jacket pocket. Likewise, Sakaki put a hand to his own pocket. Their cronies surrounded them in a big, tense circle. With my eye fixed on the scene in front of us, I leaned close to Igarashi.
俺が動いたらすぐに榊のところへ行け。
え、トワさんは
But I didn't answer. Instead, I turned and bolted in the opposite direction. Instantly, the tension exploded, shouts and gunfire in all
おい
directions.
待てとわ
While the subordinates all fought amongst each other, Sakaki and Tuna chased after me. Yeah, given that he's the son of the... You know, the leader is dead now. I barreled down a narrow alley. I could hear sharp gunshots in the distance. Were they from Sakaki and Tuna or their goons?
止まれとわ
Taku! Reflexively, I whipped my head around at the unexpected voice. Then a gun fired nearby. A hard impact struck me from behind and I crumpled face down on the ground. Sparks popped in my vision as my jaw hit the hard asphalt. Someone had pushed me aside. What do you mean? It was the owner of the unexpected voice, Taku.
Taku.
What was he doing here? Had he chased me all the way from the clinic? I was pretty sure he hadn't followed me. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see him grimacing in pain. If the gunshot didn't hit me, then... I sat up and looked at him. There was a dark stain on the left side of his chest, and I could see scarlet fluid faintly trickling out. Blood.
お前。
たく手間かけさせやがって
I could hear the click of Tuno's shoes on the pavement. No sign of Sakaki. I don't suppose Taku could have been brainwashed in order to protect the son of the head honcho. As some kind of like sleeper cell bodyguard? I could hear the click of Tuno's shoes on the pavement, no sign of Sakaki. The gun in his right hand was still smoking. Scowling, he came to a stop in front of us.
とはお前がおとなしくしないから村瀬も榊もいらん怪我をする羽目になったんだ榊は仕留め損なったがまた別の機会にやればいい今はお前たちの方が先だ
とわ逃げろお前だけでも
Absolutely the fuck not! Taku grunted in pain. With a chuckle, Tuno stomped on his chest wound.
残念ながらお前ととはセットでお持ち帰りだ
See, why is that? Grinning, he raised his gun at my head.
うちの連中がもうすぐ来るそれまで妙な真似はするなよ
I sat on my knees next to Taku and silently stared back at him. As Tuno and I quietly glared at each other, an explosion of footsteps rang out. Probably his goons.
とわ
I looked over at Taku. He was sweating bullets as he gazed at me with agony in his eyes.
とわすまん
And with that, he closed his eyes. For a moment, all the hair on my body stood on end. My mind went blank and I failed to process what I was seeing. He died? Did I just wander into a bad end by mistake? With that thought, I reached out and pressed my fingers to his throat. Thank you. I could feel his pulse throbbing away. He was alive.
死んだかまだ生きてるだろう
I fixed Tuno with an icy stare as he smiled thinly. We're also playing into a lot of tropes that I also love. More important things.
お前本当に反応が薄いな人の血が通ってないんじゃないのか
He sneered down his nose at me. Then finally I heard the sound of a car engine approaching. Taku and I were shoved into the back of the car. They drove us to District B and parked at a hotel owned by Tuno himself. When we got out of the car, his subordinates flanked us tightly on both sides, escorting us in. With Tuno leading the way, we all boarded the elevator. Then one of the lackeys slid a card into a small panel below the floor buttons. I'm fucking freaking out. What the fuck is happening? The elevator started to rise on its own, going past the top floor, 15, and stopping at the 18th floor. The elevator doors opened and we all filed out. A hallway stretched out in front of us, with doors on either side and floor lighting spaced intermittently along the way. I looked up at the ceiling and spotted a round device affixed in the corner of the ceiling, probably a surveillance camera. Tuno led us down the hallway until he stopped short at one of the doors. One of his henchmen produced a key card and opened the door. Tuno walked in, then looked over his shoulder at us.
村瀬は何度か来ているから知っているだろうが、ここは俺が運営している会員制の複合型カジノ施設だ。16階から18階まではプライベートエリアになっていて、一般人は入れない。薬が完成するまでの間、お前たちはここに滞在してもらう。この部屋と隣の部屋を使え。村瀬が仕事をするための部屋は別に用意してあるから、後で案内させる。プライベートエリアを歩き回るのは構わんが、必ず見張りをつける。建物の外には出るな。おい、やれ。
Once Tuno gave the go-ahead, his subordinate started feeling me up. He emptied my pockets, including my phone and the earpieces. Then they stripped off Taku's jacket and confiscated all of his stuff too. He was barely conscious, so he didn't protest.
とわ、お前はこっちだ。
Now we're being sequestered together under extremely intense circumstances to just orbit each other? Tuno beckoned for me with one finger, then opened the door. I walked over to him, but as I left the room, I glanced back at Taku. He still showed no signs of stirring.
村瀬の怪我は手当てする。心配するな。
Right now, I had no choice but to obey. I turned and left the room. Tuno walked down the hallway, then stopped at a different room and opened the door with a keycard. The interior reeked of perfume. 5 or 6 women lounged on the bed and sofa, dressed in fancy clothes. When they spotted Tuno, they all donned sycophantic smiles and straightened up.
トーノさん、おかえりなさい。おかえりなさい。
They slurred sweetly, greeting him.
ここにいるのは乗客やゲストをもてなすために控えている特別な女たちだ。そこらのキャバクラとはレベルが違うルックスの女しかいない。
Upon further inspection, I noticed they were all tall and slender. But I wasn't interested in women, or more accurately, I didn't feel comfortable around them. In the past, girls would hit on me and I was receptive to it, but dating them was too much work and I didn't enjoy myself. I wasn't sure when the discomfort first started, probably childhood if I had to guess. These days I tried to avoid them where possible. So if he wanted to impress me, it wasn't working. Did he really bring me here just to show me his collection of women? Mildly puzzled, I looked around the room. Just then I realized that one of the escorts wasn't looking at us. Yeah, so from the way he described it, it sounds like he has an interest in women. But due to something probably traumatic, he avoids them. She was sitting on the edge of the bed with her back turned. She seemed to despise being with these women, or rather, being here at all, with every fiber of her being. Then she looked over her shoulder and made eye contact with me. With her shoulder-length hair, she looked like an ordinary, quiet woman. She quickly averted her eyes, but it was too late. Something about her had given me pause. I didn't notice any changes in her smoke.
気になるか?
Tuno noticed me looking at her and smirked.
あの女は上玉なんだがな。態度が堅くななんだ。まあ、ああいう手合いは珍しくもない。 仕事さえこなせば何の問題もないということで好きにさせている。
それより俺をここに連れてきた理由は？
His smirk deepened.
お前は村瀬と榊両方の人質だ。特に村瀬には仕事を完遂してもらわなきゃならないからな。だがせっかくここまで来てもらったんだ。遊びを提供しようと思ったんだよ。
Fun? I looked back at him dubiously. He chuckled.
村瀬が見たら心臓が止まっちまうかもしれないな。
But he ignored my confusion and clapped his hands.
さあ、それじゃあオーダーといこうか。最高の料理に仕上げてくれ。
On cue, the women all gathered around me. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. On cue. Bewildered, I turned and glared at Tuna reproachfully.
お前に与えられた仕事だとでも思っておけばいい。
Think of what is my new job? The women gently grabbed me by both arms. Is this what I think it is? I hope to hell I was wrong. In the end, I let them drag me off to the other side of the room. I had assumed they would take me to the bed, but instead we went into the bathroom. The room was blindingly bright. The light glinted off the white marble floor and directly into my eye. Against the far wall, I could see a glass shower stall and a big round jacuzzi bathtub. Near the door was a countertop with 2 sinks. Examining the women here in this light, I noticed that in spite of their supposed good looks, they were all gaunt, with patchy skin. I had suspected maybe they were drug addicts based on their slurred speech earlier, but now I was sure of it.
それじゃあ服を脱いでくれる？
A woman with wavy, bleached hair stood me in front of the sinks. I still didn't understand what was going on, but nevertheless I slowly started to strip. Then another woman walked over. She was carrying a dress in her hands. It was visibly well tailored and made of glossy, flowy fabric. That's what I thought was happening. Once I was reduced to my underwear, the wavy-haired woman took the dress and held it out to me.
はい、これ着て。
着る？
I repeated blankly. The item in question was clearly women's clothing.
大柄な子でも入るサイズだから大丈夫。あなた細いし。
いや。
遠野さんのオーダーよ。あなたを女性に見えるように仕上げてくれって言われてるの。
I stared back, agog. Was this my new job? Huh, not cool, man.
それを着たらメイクとヘアセットもするから。
This wasn't especially encouraging, so I stood there blankly. Then she shoved the dress at me urgently.
はい、着て。
She pulled her hand away, and I reflexively snatched the dress before it could fall. Resistance was starting to feel pointless, so I decided to cooperate. That said, I didn't know the first thing about wearing a dress. As I stared down at the delicate fabric, the other women sensed my confusion and came over to help. Somehow they managed to squeeze me into it. Honestly, I had no idea how women could tolerate wearing this crap on a daily basis. It was tight, restricting, and extremely uncomfortable.
オッケー、次はメイクね。
Without a single moment to catch my breath, they sat me down in front of the sinks. The wavy-haired woman pinned my bangs up and started applying various liquids and powders to my face. My skin took on a glossy sheen, like the dress, and I had to fight the urge to scrub it off. And because there was a mirror right in front of me, I was forced to watch myself transform. I felt like I was being physically altered into a different life form, and I hated every minute.
傷跡を隠せば結構いい感じじゃない？アイシャドウはこの色が合いそう。
The girls gleefully gabbed amongst themselves, paying no mind to how I felt. This feels pretty fucking awful.
ねえ、あなた、遠野さんに気に入られてるの？
さっき聞いただろ。 人質って。
でも遠野さんが男に女装させたがるなんて今まで聞いたことないわよ。大抵は監禁して拷問とかそういう感じだし。
あんたたちは遠野が怖くないのか？
怖いって言えば怖いけど、逆らわなければ優しいし、たまに欲しいものを買ってくれることもあるし、別に嫌いじゃないわよ。ねえ。
The other women all readily agreed.
もしかしたらあなたパーティーに出るの？
パーティー？
そう、もうすぐ本土の政治家や官僚たちを呼ぶパーティーがあるらしいの。でもよく考えたらそんな大事な場所に女装した男の人を連れて行くなんてことさすがにないわよね。
I feel like they're gonna try to pass Toa around in one way or another. They giggled. A party with mainland politicians and bureaucrats. Igarashi and Sakaki both claimed Tuna was plotting something. Is it not even for Shinkomi? Is it a mainland power grab? Was he trying to have the drug ready in time for this party? Was that why he brought Taku here? The mainland police were always eagerly watching for the opportunity to take Shinkomi away from the Takasato Gumi. If they knew the organization was plotting to distribute a new drug, they'd pounce ASAP. So Tuno probably figured he could keep the cops in check if he announced it as a business strategy and offered to share the profits. The goal of the party was probably to lay the groundwork for investor relations. That also makes a lot of sense. I'm over here like, drug everybody, kill them, something. Tuno was rushing Taku to finish the job because of this hard deadline. If successful, Tuno would gain massive support both internally and externally, giving him an optimal chance to upstage Sakaki. No, this makes sense.
そのパーティーって
More sense.
いつかわかるか？
ここのカゴって言ってたわよ。私たちも借り出されるの。
Great!
そうか。
As I spoke, I looked back at my reflection in the mirror. With skin like molded clay, I could no longer tell the difference between myself and the women around me. After my makeup was done, they put a wig on me and started styling my hair, all while having the time of their lives. Then I stepped into a pair of stiletto heels, and apparently my makeover was complete. I was taken back to the living room. The perfume-like smell embedded in the makeup was making me sick. Both the dress and the heels were hard to move around in. If I fell, I probably wasn't getting back up. As I staggered across the room, I noticed Tuno standing there. Apparently he was waiting for his finished product. I expected him to start making fun of me, but instead he looked at me with a satisfied grin.
思った以上の出来だな。なかなか似合ってるじゃないか。どうだ？女になった気分は。
別にどうもしない。
I mean, because we are privy to your internal monologue, we know that you fucking hate this. And that's why, even though he's obviously stunning, it kind of doesn't matter. Because he hates this. He snorted at my apathetic response, then looked at the women.
お前たち、後で好きなものを買ってやる。
My tormentors all squealed in delight.
来いとは。村瀬に披露しに行くぞ。
I had a feeling! Why didn't I say it? Why do I withhold things sometimes? Why? Why do I do this? But no, I was like, are they going to try to pass him off to Taku as not even Toa? Or is this to just fuck with Toa in a Toa doesn't think he's into men, so what if we... Like, is this just mind games? And also, why? Why this type of sadisticness to everybody involved? Is it really just he's clearly a fucking psychopath? Like a gentleman, he elegantly proffered a hand. I ignored it.
あんた、こういう趣味があるのか?
I was half teasing, half serious. He retracted his hand and shrugged.
いや、俺の興味の対象は女だ。
Please don't! That was another thought I had.
まあ、お前に関しては例外と言っていいかもしれんな。
That we were being dressed up for him specifically, you know what I mean?
俺なら抱けるって。
今のお前ならな。
He responded to my challenge with a twisted sneer.
そういう仕事だと思って、お前も割り切って楽しめよ。行くぞ。
Is his job to what? Get Taku to fuck him? I don't... He headed for the door. As for me, my legs were shaky and I could barely walk. These heels weren't easy to adapt to. Yeah, especially if you're just thrown into stilettos. I'm surprised he's still standing, to be honest. As I floundered, Tuno clucked his tongue and came back over. Then he slid an arm around my waist and pulled me close.
骨っぽいな。
He muttered flatly under his breath and started walking. I leaned against him, struggling to stay upright in these heels. After we left the women's room, we returned to the previous room. Shit! And I have to stop here? Are you kidding me? If I can get the rest of my work done today, the odds are extremely good that I'm legit just going to pick this up later. Because what do you mean I have to stop here? Fuck. Well, that's it for this bit of slow damage. I'm speechless. This is so fucking good that I can't even process how good it is. I need time. So maybe it's good that I'm being forced to take a break and go do other things for a while. If it is at all in my power, I will be back later. Okay. Ah! That was my phone. I'll